So for these reasons, I believe that America is losing this war and that ultimately this war will be lost. The Iranians are fighting a very different war from the Americans. The narrative space, the political space, and the economic space to conform to the military strategy. So this is the American strategy, forcing the narrative, political, and economic spheres to conform to the military strategy. So what I want to do now is examine how this war will turn out, okay? So I've said this many times, but the Americans are losing this war. And the main reason is the problem of hubris. And so I want to examine closely what this means strategically, what this means on the battlefield, okay? So war is fought across 4 dimensions, all right? There is the narrative dimension, meaning global opinion, how history will perceive this war. There is the political dimension, meaning how your allies perceive this war, how your domestic base perceive this war. There's the economic, and then there's the military. If we examine this war closely, the Iranians are fighting a very different war from the Americans. What the Americans are doing is basically they are shifting the narrative, political sphere, and economic sphere to fit their economic strategy, okay? Their economic strategy is decapitation, which forces surrender, right? So what they want to do is they want to not destroy the Iranian leadership, destroy the Iranian economy to force a surrender, in which case the Americans can dictate terms. That is their strategy, and that's about it. And they are forcing the narrative space, the political space, and the economic space to conform to the military strategy, meaning that they expect the allies, NATO, they expect the media, they expect the economy to support their strategy. So, for example, in the political space, Donald Trump has ordered NATO to come and open up the Strait of Hormuz, okay? And also, Donald Trump refuses to acknowledge the fact that this war is very unpopular back in America. In the economic space, what the Americans are trying to do is keep the price of oil low so that it does not disrupt the global economy. And they do that, of course, by unsectioning Russian and Iranian oil, which benefits the Russian and Iranian economies, okay? And in a narrative space, they're basically trying to tell the media to follow the party line. Donald Trump has threatened journalists that if you do not report this war is going well, then I might put you in prison, all right? So this is the American strategy, forcing the narrative, political, and economic spheres to conform to the military strategy. The Iranians have a different approach. The Iranians are using the military in order to impact the economic, political, and narrative spheres. All right, it's completely reversed. So the military strategy is calibrated in a certain way to benefit the Iranian economy, okay? So what I mean by that is that the military is strategically controlling the Strait of Hormuz so that Chinese ships can pass, right? Because Chinese ships are the main buyer of Iranian oil. Also, if you're willing to play ball like Japan or Qatar or Oman, they will also let your ships pass, okay? So this is being strategic. Politically, the Iranians are trying to split the Gulf states, right? They know that Saudi Arabia and UAE are committed to regime change in Iran, but they know that Qatar, Bahrain, Qatar and Oman are on the other side, okay? So they're trying to gain as much global leverage as possible within the GCC. And the narrative is they're trying to shape global opinion and trying to make everyone believe that they are on the right side of history. And most people believe that. In fact, you have a lot of Americans who are rooting for the Iranians to win. All right? So this is a very different, these are two very different strategies. All right, so let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both strategies. Okay, so from the American perspective, the fact that you have this approach of making the world conform to your military strategy basically means that you lack what we call reflection, okay? Meaning that you're not able to sit down with your strategists and discuss how this war is going and how to make changes. But the Iranians are able to do so because the military has to conform to the economic, political, and narrative strategies, okay? Second is flexibility. And what I mean by that is the military strategy, if it's not going well for the Americans, they lack the capacity to reflect and make changes. So what they do is they double down, okay? They accelerate the process of bombing in Iran, even though it's probably not getting them anywhere. Also, much more importantly, the Americans will choose much more self-destructive, desperate strategies, such as sending ground troops. It is possible by this weekend, ground troops will be sent into Iran, which most military analysts believe to be either countereffective or suicidal, okay? The Iranians, on the other hand, can adapt their military strategy to the economic and political realities. Okay, so for example, what they're doing now is they're charging tolls to cross the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, and the third difference is the idea of resilience. So, in other words, if you make the world and America conform to your military strategy, they won't support you. That means that if you're losing troops and you're losing equipment, it is very hard to resupply. Whereas the complete opposite in Iran, where because they are winning popular opinion, because their economy is becoming stronger in this process, because they're winning more political allies, they can actually draw on more support from the population, and they can also recruit foreign fighters and foreign support, foreign sympathy for their cause. Okay? So for these reasons, I believe that America is losing this war and that ultimately this war will be lost. When this will happen, we don't know, because America is an empire and they can actually drag us on for at least 20 years.